was on a 3-fight losing streak. Going into his last fight against Dalcha champion, but like, I love McConan in 2014. Got the club going up, and he was able to go out there, thwart the takedown attempts at open space by Dalcha, keep it in boxing distance, and drop Dalcha with a combination of knees and punches. And then he really did have a pretty highlight reel finish to that win over Dalcha Lungiambula. A big kind of get-right fight for Edmen. And if you look at it, I mean, he was very highly ranked going into the fight against Derek Brunson. That was a 3-round main event. He was very heavily favored in that fight. Ultimately, the takedowns, they were his Achilles heel there. And when you look at it in a matchup like this, Matt, Edmen's takedown defense has cost him in other fights. Nasrin Imavov, Jack Hermanson. It's cost him in fights. But his striking has always been good, and the move to Extreme Couture's last time out really helped him out. Now, it was one of those trap cards because that was Dalcha's old gym, and then he moved on. Shahbazyan goes there, and he gets to kind of piggyback off the knowledge of the coaches. But when I look at a fight like this, Matt, Anthony Hernandez has been so good in these finishes that he has. But when I went back and watched the tape, my good grief, he leaves himself out there to get hit in every single fight, and he does.
He certainly does.
He does.
He has a great chin, though.
No, he doesn't.
He has pretty good chin, I'd say. He's been clipped in basically every fight he's ever been in, and he's won the majority of them. Like, he gets hit a lot. That's my whole point. You're getting so aggressive at points, Craig. Just
bare knuckles own Maluco Perez.
I know, but you're too hot-headed. It's all good. For Edmen Shahbazyan, I don't think we learned a lot in the Dalcha performance. That's all I'm saying. Because he lost to great fighters, and that's what we thought Edmen was for a very long time in his career. I thought that that's what he was, before, I guess, going into the Derek Brunson fight. Because you don't beat Brad Tavares by first-round knockout, and that's kind of a fluke, right? Because Brad Tavares, might not win every single one of his fights, right? Like, he's pretty basic. You know what he's good at. You know what he's not good at. But you rarely starch him and then don't go on to do great things. Look at guys like Yoel Romero. Look at, Robert Whittaker was able to do it with that beautiful left hook. So normally when you beat Brad Tavares, great things happen to you in your career. But Edmen Shahbazyan, he's one of these guys who, when you have all these first-round knockouts, it's great to talk about, right? Like, hey, they're so picture perfect. The technique's great. But it also leaves a lot of question marks as to what happens after minute 5. What happens 6 through 15. And then 6 through 25 when you reach the point of the division that Edmen had reached. And we have seen that he can start to slow down at those points. Now, you bring it up. Anthony Hernandez has been hurt, has been clipped in many of his fights. And if Edmen does go in there with the confidence that he had in the Brad Tavares fight, where he's peppering the jab out there, getting Anthony Hernandez uncomfortable on the back foot, I could definitely see Edmen going in there and getting one of those kind of picture-perfect TKO wins. But the flip side is, when Anthony Hernandez is able to kind of settle his way into the fight, get it ugly, because his striking, I think, has improved quite a bit throughout his UFC tenure. We all know how good he is on the mat. The crazy Rodolfo Vieira win he was able to get. So this is a really fun fight, because again, I could see Edmen going in there kind of starching Anthony Hernandez and getting back, maybe not all of the hype that he once had, but at least getting back into a position to where he can fight for a spot in the rankings. And if Anthony Hernandez beats Edmen Shahbazyan, you're beating a guy who was ranked in the top 10 at one point.
Edmen Shahbazyan, I know he was kind of that, big-time prospect. He was a Ronda Rousey, had that seal of approval, trained under Edmond Tarverdyan. You watch Edmen Shahbazyan strike, and he kind of strikes like Anthony Hernandez's main training partner, Max Griffin. It's a lot of moving that upper body. He's throwing a lot of odd angle punches, low base on him. If you look at Shahbazyan, though, struggling with some of those takedowns, Anthony Hernandez, now, as he's progressed in the UFC and as he's beaten Fremd and Barrio, you see him come out with his hands really high and almost like a tie stance. I actually had it in my notes. I know it's a net negative because of the way that people are going to look at him after his fight last weekend in Anthony Smith. But he comes up with that knee up. He holds his hands up and he moves his head a lot. But his head's always there because his body doesn't move. His head's just there moving. And then he closes the distance really fast. And then he tries to get the takedown. He'll go single leg, double leg, single leg. He tries to chain it. If you make a mistake and go for your own takedown, well, that's your problem, buddy. But when you look at this fight, Matt, I mean, Anthony Hernandez overall, I think he has gotten better, but I saw him get clipped by Barrio. I saw him get clipped by Kevin Holland, who was able to keep his arms out there, land those big shots. And then when Hernandez rushed in for the takedown, he got met by the knee. Shahbazyan was able to land the big knees against Dalcha Lungiambula. And I know there's a no contest on Hernandez's record. That's the win that he had over Jordan Reid on Contender Series, where he tested positive for the weed. But if you look at it for Hernandez, he loses to Maluco Perez in his UFC debut, where first round, Perez out-wrestles him. Second round, Perez out-wrestles him and submits him. And then that other loss to Holland, other than that, pretty well a clean sheet. He's able to take down Jun Young Park, who's very well-rounded and a good boxer.
Would you say, though, it is a little bit similar to last weekend's main event that we had looked at between Jailton Almeida and Jairzinho with this respect? Jalton, we know how good his grappling is, right? When he gets on top, he can make a lot happen. We were wondering, okay, can he get past the initial takedown defense of Jairzinho? I do think if Hernandez gets on top of Edmen, he is going to have a lot of success. It'll look a lot like the Hermanson fight, I think. I think we will see some of that activity in a lot of favorable positions from Hernandez, just because I don't think Shahbazyan's going to be able to have that kind of work rate to get out for some of those positions underneath.
I'm not completely sold on Edmen Shahbazyan if you haven't kind of gauged it already. I mean, Hernandez is a giant favorite in the matchup. If you do look at the Topology votes, Matt, surprise to us there to you. I'm going to say over under 85% Hernandez.
I think it'll be under 85.
It's going to be under. It's under 1,044 total votes. 70% Hernandez, 68% by submission for the 30% that have Shahbazyan, 53% by knockout. And when I do look at this matchup, Matt, I mean, for Hernandez, stringing together takedowns against Barrio and against Josh Fremd, those two guys have wrestling in their back pockets. If you're able to do that, that is definitely very telling. I do have a hard time seeing him getting them. He could definitely get them. It's just, this is the fight.
Dog get him in the Barrio fight.
This is the fight that I have the hardest job trying to offer a prediction on the entire card.
If it's under 6 minutes, I have Edmen. If it goes past 6 minutes, I have Hernandez. Anthony Hernandez on top of you is not a position you want to be in. He can threaten with submissions. He does have good ground and pound, and he's a big guy. I know he's not really for the weight class, but he makes you feel his presence when he's in that spot. And we've seen Edmen really struggle.
You got to explain this to everybody, and to me as well. You talked about it with Anthony Hernandez. You said the same thing about Joaquin Buckley. What is feeling somebody's presence?
What do you mean? Okay, so feeling somebody's presence is really easy to say. Is it like
when you walk into a room,
I can describe it easily.
You know there's a
Joaquin Buckley is a big guy, right? He can back you up without throwing punches. He can feint punches, and you are going to back up because you feel his presence. I don't think this is a weird thing, by the way. I think a lot of people are going to agree and know exactly what I'm talking about. With Anthony Hernandez, he's a heavy guy in the top position, like a lead blanket, if you will, like Tim Kennedy. That's all I'm saying. I think he's going to win a lot of those positions in the top, but that's the thing. I think Edmen's going to be able to tee off on him for like a 3.5 minute portion in this fight. What happens after that 3.5 minute round is going to be really interesting, but I'm going to pick Anthony Hernandez in the matchup.
Yeah, I mean, Anthony Hernandez with those big blitzes like he had against Perez, like he had against Holland, like he had against Barrio, he got clipped in all of them. That's why I don't have a ton of confidence in picking Anthony Hernandez. I think he's going to have success with the takedowns. I mean, we saw Shahbazyan, though, in the fight against Imavov. It was Shahbazyan that shot for the takedown that ended up getting him finished, but it was because Imavov had the kickboxing to then get into that range to then force that takedown. So
he also shot, 38 takedown attempts on Darren Stewart in his debut?
Hernandez doesn't necessarily have that in his striking repertoire. That's why I don't love the pick with Anthony Hernandez. I will go with Hernandez, though. But it is a really, really tricky one, and that takes us into the main event of the evening, a fight that was shuffled from a week ago. Mackenzie Dern taking on Angela Hill.